¿Cómo hacer que los nuevos profesionales y los estudiantes se conviertan en agentes de cambio? ¿Cómo hacer que asuman ese rol de manera activa? Para hablar de esto, queremos darle la bienvenida a Niels Hendricks y Andrea Wilkinson de Luke School of Arts, que nos hablarán del proyecto Dementia Lab, a Rosman Amstel, que nos hablará de The Bildung Academy, Amsterdam, a Carla Chipola, que nos hablará, bueno, ella viene de la Universidad Federal de Río de Janeiro y nos va a hablar de la red internacional DESIS, y a nuestro conector, Arturo Cherbowski. Un aplauso, por favor.
Muchísimas gracias a todos. Muchas gracias. Empezamos con este primer panel. ¿Cómo están siendo formados y educados los estudiantes para convertirse en futuros líderes innovadores sociales? Creo que un tema que a todos nos trae aquí convocados, y con eso tenemos muchísimo gusto y un honor de presentarles, primero que nada, para que nos hagan una presentación del trabajo que están haciendo, a Niels y a Andrea. Por favor, Niels, Andrea, si nos presentan.
Okay, good morning, and thank you for having us. I'm always happy to come and talk about what I'm passionate about, so that's a great opportunity for having us. My name is Niels, this is my colleague Andrea. We are both design researchers and educators in Belgium, and for 7 years now, our focus has been on applying design to the benefit of people with dementia. We've worked in Belgium as well as abroad, in Hong Kong, Denmark, the US, and Germany on this topic. In the following presentation, we will tell very briefly why and in what way we are doing this. The quote you see here is by Finnish design thinker Ramia Mazé, and it sums up the ideology that drives the work we do. Design is more than only a functional or aesthetic act. In designing, one must recognize that design has an impact on and thus has to be reflective of its surroundings. Our academy, Lucas School of Arts, is located in Genk, a post-industrial town in Belgium, which used to have coal mines until a few years ago a large Ford automobile factory. The sort of industry brought with it high levels of immigration, and it grew from a village of a couple of hundred inhabitants at the beginning of the 20th century to a town of approximately 80,000 inhabitants now. When we say post-industrial, we mean that this form of labor no longer exists. The coal mines closed in the 80s and the Ford factory in 2014. The combination of high immigration and the conflicts that this brings, combined with the closure of 2 large industries, has had an effect on the local community and the larger region. The town of Genk and the larger region is now faced with a high prevalence of child poverty, in fact the highest in Belgium. Mix of cultures and ethnicities that clashes with the local identity, high youth unemployment, and changing demographics. There's a large aging population now. In the past decade, the area which was once home to mining has been transformed to a site dedicated to culture, arts, and the creative industry. You can see it here on the picture. In 2010, our academy moved to the new campus located just to the right of those mining towers you can see, in a new multi-million-dollar building. Opa. And then I did what wasn't supposed to. Yeah. Okay, so when you're moving into this multi-million-dollar building at this site, which used to be the industrial heart of its town, but now is gone, what do you do? The question then for Academy is, how to respond to the challenges facing the region, town, and community we are based within? How can we become part of the community instead of an island? The result is an art faculty that values the aesthetic qualities of design and the study of materials, but believes that its work should go beyond this point. Therefore, as design educators and researchers, we have particular ideologies that drive our approaches. We want to include the community in our design process through participatory design. We invest time in engaging with members of the community and work on projects for a longer period instead of going for quick turnaround projects. We look at technology or material not as the next cool thing, but we encourage design that adds value. And we do not take a distance in our design work, but we integrate into the homes, workplaces, and place of care. In doing so, we engage with local organizations to develop lasting relationships that we can refer to time and time again. And there are a lot of projects I could talk about, but I'm going to only focus on one and on the one we are talking about. And this one you can see here is the andere Markt, or translated to English, the other market, for example. It's a project that, based in our local community, looked to support individuals who were doing informal forms of work and see how these informal forms of work could be nurtured without it having become part of the official or formal economy. We, for example, worked together with a large group of people in Genk who set up small living room restaurants, from pizzerias in the garage, of a home to a Turkish sweets shop operated from someone's kitchen. They set up these small illegal restaurants as a way to survive, as they, as skilled workers, could not find a job. We brought together these restaurants and helped them set up a structure to learn from each other, how to make sure your food is safe and hygienic, how to share resources working together with local farmers. But the example we're talking about today is our Dementia Lab. In the Dementia Lab, we work closely with people with dementia, their family and caregivers, trying to find and create ways in which design can make their life more pleasant. The Dementia Lab is what we're going to talk about now. But first, what is dementia? And then it becomes a bit interactive. I want to know who knows someone or knew someone with dementia here in this room. You can raise your hands. That's, well, not half of it, I would say 1/4 or 1/3. Yeah, okay. So we are all affected a bit by dementia. And can someone shout? What is the most common symptom of dementia? Yes, forgetfulness, indeed. There are other symptoms. People with dementia indeed suffer from memory loss, but also from a disorientation in time and place, impaired reasoning, difficulties with language and in performing motor tasks. And these issues are as frequent as the memory problems. What dementia does is, over time, it makes it impossible to carry out basic daily tasks. And it's degenerative. It cannot be healed. It can only go worse. In Mexico, as in most countries, the aging population is increasing. And as the aging population increases, so does the number of people with dementia. It is forecasted that by 2050, dementia will affect 10% of the population of Mexico City. If you look at the Belgian case, it's no different. If you look at Belgian care system, in Belgium, people with advanced stages of dementia no longer live at home. They most often live in care facilities with round-the-clock supervision and nursing staff.
When we were first confronted with dementia as a design problem 7 years ago, our first question then, what is the role that design can play? Many of the projects that we saw then and we continue to see today focus on alarm systems, monitoring, tracking, safety, security, and these are very important issues for sure. But these projects focus on the carers, the family members, and easing the burden of caring for someone with this condition. But the projects or these designs are not really focusing on the person with dementia themselves. Just to give an example, people with dementia in a care facility, if they're living there, they can, certainly at the end of the day, can become quite agitated and they start wandering around and really they want to go home. To counter this, what you see is that family members and care facilities as well will install monitoring systems to solve this problem. And what happens then is when the person with dementia tries to leave the building or tries to leave their safe perimeter, the person, the carer will get an alarm letting them know that they're leaving. They can then intervene and take this person back to their room or back to safety. And there's nothing wrong with this design. It solves the problem, but it doesn't solve the person with dementia's feeling of unrest or they're wanting to leave. And so one of the things that we wanted to do and to change was to place the person with dementia into the design process and focus on their issues. And this is how we define making the life of the person with dementia more pleasant. And this is what we try to do in our own research projects in this area, but also with our students. Those of you that are familiar with design anthropology will probably feel that this kind of resonates with the approach that we're going to talk about. The basic premise is that we don't stay on the fringes. We actually try to embed ourselves into the care situation. And what that means for our students is that we work entirely off-site, that our classroom is in the care facility.
We believe that in order for our students to make something that meets the needs of someone with this condition, they need to be familiar and sensitive to the context that this person lives in. They need to be sensitive to what the environment looks like. Often the furniture will be outdated. The rooms that the people will live in will not feel as homely as we might expect as visitors. Students need to be familiar with what the environment smells like, and that can be positive and negative. It can smell like cleaning supplies or fresh coffee, or it can smell like soup that's being served, or medicine, or it can smell like urine. After an introduction into the course and an introduction by the care facilities, our students help out with lunch, they hold people's hands, they sit beside people, they sing along in choirs that come. And over this course, they really begin from a position of being a human, a fellow human, instead of working just from that position of being a designer. What we think is this way of working kind of asks students to shift their way of thinking about design and design research. In terms of design processes, often what we think is we, as researchers or as designers, we go and we're sponges and we take up information from users, we interview them, we observe them, and then we go away to our ivory tower, our beautiful design studios, our workstations, our workshops, and then we make a design and we come back and say, look how beautiful this thing is that I've made, and maybe we test it. And in our courses, we don't do that. We become part of the environment, and the students lose this sort of kind of I'm an island, I'm a designer approach, and they become part of the fabric of the care facility. And we believe that each of these experiences that the design students have actually informs their designs. What the students are actually doing is that they're designing for one person. They're not designing for the theme dementia, which we can all understand dementia as a kind of generalizable topic, but they're actually designing for an individual's experience of dementia. And what we find interesting about this approach is that although they're designing for one person, the thing that they often make can be relevant for other people. So instead of creating a generalized design, they're actually making a personalized design that maybe can be transferable later. This working together is a form, we think, of participation, and the students are responding to this one person's needs, their wants, their interests, their abilities. Abilities is very key in that regard, and they really search for ways to get this person involved in the design process. The design process also asks the students to value not only the person with dementia and their input, but also the network of care, that's what we call it, of the person, the people surrounding the person. That can be their caregivers, family members, friends, volunteers, loved ones. One of the major takeaways that we think for students, and we've heard this already this morning, in terms of education, is that the thing that they make must integrate into the daily life of care. If they didn't get buy-in from the family, if they haven't tested it, if no one understands how it works, the object will stay on the shelf. And that is a very important thing for students to learn while they're in design education. Finally, the things that the students are making, often what we say or what we call it is that it's mediating relationships. In our course, we don't focus necessarily on the aesthetic qualities. That becomes kind of secondary. Our focus is on how it will be used and what it offers. An example, I'll tell you a story. We have lots of these stories. If you see us later, we can tell you more. One example is from a student named Doreen. And Doreen worked with a man, Fernand, who had dementia, and he had recently, through the progression of dementia, the condition, had lost the ability to communicate verbally. Fernand had never been married, and he had no children. He had always been close to one niece, and his niece lived in a faraway town, but she came once a week to visit him. His niece told Doreen, our student, that Fernand had always been really funny. He'd always been a joker, and it was this joking that she really loved about him. But since he had been stopped speaking, she found it really hard to recognize him as this person that she really cared for and loved all these years. And she was, this joking kind of was gone with him, and she told Doreen that she was considering stopping coming, and that she was considering telling him goodbye. And you can imagine being a student, and we talked with her about this, you can imagine that she kind of struggled with this. So Doreen spent time with Fernand, and she noticed that he was enjoying little tiny small moments in the day. He liked to stand in the sunshine. He enjoyed touching her arm. He liked going walks in the hall. And so in her project, the Do Nothing Kit, Doreen tried to provide the niece with a new way to get to know her uncle, to appreciate the time that she spent with him. It provided activities and objects to explore together. It asked the niece to reflect after an activity on what did she find the most rewarding about that time spent with him. What did she think that he enjoyed most? And in other words, Doreen focused on how a design could foster a new relationship and mediate the relationship between Fernand and his niece.
So if we go back to our first slide, as we said, we believe design practices are not neutral. And we see that design is no longer purely about products, but it's about services and how these impact people. It's about relationships and how setting up and nurturing good relationships with the one you design for is as important as skills such as programming or grid structures or montage. It is about the diverse group of people you as a designer need to enable to be part of the design process. And it's about engagement and how you will have to engage deep in the context you work with and the persons you design for. And leading out of this are questions we as design students, design educators, and organizations working with designers should ask. And I'm quite happy that they resonate a lot that you've been talking about as well. As design educators and design education institutes, are we training students to be skilled to work in this way? Many skills are still trapped in traditions. We are teaching young people to respond to design problems in the same way that we were taught. But are these skills and competences enough? And as design students, are we willing to make sure that our design has meaning, has impact, makes change beyond it being aesthetically nice and functional? And are we prepared to fight to make a living out of this and not give in to do purely market-driven design? And finally, for those of you representing these non-traditional contexts, such as care, for example, where these designers will work in the future, is your organization willing and open enough to accept that their work will be part of your domain and that it should be appreciated both for its content as well as financially? So we wish to thank you that we have shared this story with you. If you have questions and want to hear more stories, we can talk hours, really, we can. Come to us during the coffee break or visit our site and find out about our projects. Thank you.